A stablecoin war is brewing. China and the United States are now going head to head. I'll explain it all for you. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into the show. Let's get started today. I want to thank our sponsor, iTrust Capital, where you guys can get a crypto IRA just for you. And the cool thing about IRAs is this is great tax planning. If you haven't put one in place, this is your time to get one going for your own crypto, gold, silver account. You can do it over there and join 200,000 other people out there that are building in their own crypto IRA with iTrust Capital. Use our link. It's going to get you a $100 funding reward to get started. All right, let's go into some of the news today. And one of the things that I think is interesting is what is going on in China right now around China considering the yuan-backed stablecoin. And the main thing is this is designed to boost their currency usage. And I'll explain how this will affect the maybe even tariffs. And there's a whole strategy that's boiling around this. This is a big deal, and it could really start to play out. If you look at what they're doing in terms of the announcement, this could possibly happen as early as August 31st during an event that's being done. This could start to put them back in play. Remember, China was the one that pretty much kicked out all the Bitcoin miners in 2021. We started to see a complete shift away from crypto, and now things are starting to turn the edge because we are seeing now some concern around this. Now, part of it has boiled down to this statement right here. Sluggish manufacturing, real estate, labor markets, all these kind of things are dealing with an issue. This may be a potential stimulus to help support that. There's some analysts that are kind of pointing to that very issue on the slowing economy compared to and for the reason of U.S. tariffs. And remember, some of the strategies that might be taking place, we don't know this yet, but my guess is this is a strategy that I would do if I was in business in China, is you may have to lower costs to an American supplier or American supply chain to be able to keep up with being able to sell that product. And if that is the case, it might end up actually affecting their profitability, which seems to be happening in the Chinese GDP. Another thing that's happening right here, there's a company over there, one of the banks, Merchant Banks, launches a crypto exchange in Hong Kong. So what that means is this is a process that these banks are going through. This is just one example of a bank right there, 1.7 trillion right now. That's a 12% increase year over year. And you can kind of see the growth right here in terms of how much liquidity this could pour into a stablecoin. If you look at stablecoins in general, they are clearly dominating the top of search terms. This, of course, in comparison to altcoin season, prediction markets, crypto gaming, stablecoin is the clear winner here. And there's a big reason why this is starting to boil down into a war between some of the companies or countries out there. Of course, the stablecoin versus digital yuan. The digital yuan was launched quite some time ago, clearly a nothing burger compared to what's happening in the stablecoin market. And the United States is leading the charge around this. An interesting development in terms of timing. If you look at what's happening in China right now with the digital yuan or a potential stablecoin for the yuan, Wyoming, a state here in the United States, launches their own stablecoin. This is Front. We talked about this earlier this week. If you didn't check that video out, go and do that. But not without a little bit of pressure. Front is not currently available for purchase. Now I want to go over to Anthony Apollo. We've had him on our show before. This is the guy who pretty much spearheaded the movement, selecting the chains, getting the structure put in place. Listen to what he had to say.
You issued the first state-issued stablecoin, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think anybody else has done that in the world, right?
The first fiat-backed and fully reserved stablecoin issued by a public entity.
Right.
Really the culmination of nearly a decade of work within the state of Wyoming.
Now there's a caveat here. The token was supposed to be available to the public today in its public launch. It's not. So can you tell us a little bit about what happened there?
It is not lost on myself or the team or our commissioners that this is a TradFi problem. And I do believe when our chairman, Governor Mark Gordon, is on stage on Wednesday, he may have more to say about all of this. We look at this as kind of a temporary setback. We're still way ahead by years of any other public body doing this kind of work. We announced, the RAIN integration on Avalanche. We announced Kraken and Solana. The hope would be by the time we actually get this thing rolling, we're on all 7 chains with a couple of partners and a couple of high-profile use cases.
All right, so the issue, and we've raised this before, is that the banks are pushing back on this. Bankers want stablecoin laws changed. We reported on this. This is, I think, going head to head, not only with companies and groups like what we're seeing in Wyoming, but also with even Ripple. Ripple was one of the biggest because of the lobby groups that are now pushing against many of these banking charters, which of course starts to make way for things like RLUSD and others. So this is all starting to boil because now you're dealing with a global stage around how China could be playing into this. Now let's go back to China for a second. This is the dollar versus the yuan. And I want to show you something here because the yuan still holds a very low value in comparison to the US dollar and has been pretty much that way really since 1995 when the digital yuan came on, or really the Chinese yuan came onto the scene. Now it's interesting here, some of this probably was rising, and I think a lot of analysts have kind of pointed to this because of the sanctions on other countries, and those countries started to trade in the renminbi. That is where I think we're seeing some of this growth. This could start to pivot though. So I want to go to a clip real quick because this will get into a little bit more of how the US stablecoin market could be a dominant factor going forward. Take a look.
From a national security and economic policy perspective, hugely disruptive for China's plans to move away from the dollar.
Can China control and limit the adoption?
What do I need to get my hands on a dollar stablecoin? The internet and something of value to trade for it. So if I'm somebody in China and I've got anything I can sell and somebody will send me a Bitcoin or US dollar stablecoin, done.
You would need them to somehow buy a gold bar and then deliver the gold bar to someone, and then the person receiving it says, okay.
Which is totally doable because China is an export-based economy.
Sure.
I'm a Chinese company. I have products that I want to sell to a US company. And normally I'd quote them in renminbi, let's say $50,000 equivalent. Now I'm going to quote them $25,000 equivalent, and the Chinese government doesn't need to know they sent me the other 25K in crypto. Because how are you going to police that? As soon as you're doing external trade, or even in some ways internal trade, but mostly external trade, this becomes an unsolvable problem. You have to stop letting people use the internet and transacting with the rest of the world, which is why, again, only the North Koreans really effectively interdicted this.
So the fact that China has a big export economy actually creates their own vulnerability. They accept
Correct.
payment in US stablecoin, and that's it.
Yeah, this is why I said it's a really underappreciated tool of economic warfare for the United States, because it is explicitly a way to break China's currency controls. This will be way more effective than tariffs.
So when you look at all of this, stablecoins actually become the real weapon of choice rather than tariffs. Hopefully POTUS and the administration will start to look at this. Here's a good example right here. This, of course, is Sony PlayStation's. And a lot of these which are starting to ramp up in terms of price. The Switch 2 still the cheapest, but everything's going up and being effectively marketed to the US market now because of these tariffs. This is a huge factor going forward. Now I want to play another clip for you guys. This is Arthur Hayes, where he goes into a strategy that might actually be in play. Take a look.
Bessent finally has a sanctions weapon. All the elites essentially steal from their people and put their money in US banks. If you don't allow Western social media companies to bank all of your people with dollars, I'm going to sanction you and you're going to lose access to the billions of dollars that you stole from your people. And so guess what's going to happen? Nothing. That is how you're going to get $25 trillion TAM of money that could flow into dollar stablecoins. And then basically what does a stablecoin do? They're going to buy treasury bills and they'll buy it at whatever yield Bessent offers. He can completely destroy the Fed. He can put, short-term rates wherever he wants it. Now he's got a sink of tens of trillions of dollars that he can essentially fund the US government with until they do some sort of yield curve control to bring down the long end. That's what I would do if I was Bessent.
Let's break that down, because the potential now for stablecoins reverse engineering as a defense mechanism for global trade is huge, because this starts to affect everything. It will affect the Chinese economy. I think it starts to also export the dollars at a scale in which he's talking about, because they're in a position where they pretty much put everybody on cue of being able to say, yes, you have to accept these stable coins if you want to be able to do trade with the United States. And again, this starts to point into one direction, and that is, remember, ETH wins the game here. This is what we'll see overall, I think, in terms of stablecoin usage and the continuation of it. Before we go further, because I think there's some more here, I want to thank our sponsor, and that is Salt Lending. Of course, if you guys want to take a loan out on your Bitcoin, this is the place to do it. They have something really special there, which they just introduced, which is called Salt Shield. Protects you against liquidation, so it's a very cool tool when you're looking at your loan to value on your Bitcoin. Most of the time, you're only at a 50%. You don't have to really worry about it unless we saw a major market correction, but most people are looking in these pullbacks. It's a perfect time for you to go out and get a little bit of loan on your Bitcoin. So check out Salt Lending. We'll leave a link down below. All right, let's go forward here because this is where we bring in Japan. And Japan, as you know, has already kind of been moving in this direction. I'm going to zoom in on that for you. They are now approving the first yen stablecoin, and this is going to be launching this fall. And when you look at the company that's behind Sonium, who is the company behind the blockchain that essentially Japan is building on, listen to what their founder had to say.
Web3 is definitely one of the biggest opportunity Japan can take. In our valuation exceeded 1.5 billion. And then the Japanese government realized that if we make Asta in Japan, we had to pay 300 million, which is not possible. They realized. And then from the last year, they changed the law, tax law, and now there is no tax. The crypto issued by own company, there is no tax. And from this year, there is no tax on unrealized gain. We are constantly changing the Japanese law and tax. And now we are backed by Sony. We also raise capital fund from Samsung and also UOB. We are strategically doing this. It is really difficult for Asta to compete with, let's say, Arbitrum or maybe Optimism. In a DeFi area, probably it is very difficult. They have networking effects. So we needed to find a sweet spot, which we can win. So our target is not DeFi user. Our main target is the ordinary people who are walking outside right now. This population is much more than this, the first one. I think Polygon's approach is pretty correct, very correct in terms of history.
All right, so reaffirming what Sota just said is now JPYC also approved Polygon. So this is another, let me kind of zoom in on that. So launching on Polygon soon and also on Avalanche. So this all starts to bring in many of these other tokens and the strength of where this might go, because the Japanese market, I think, may end up being one of the leaders out there. Now, if you compare this right now, you can kind of see the prepaid source network, Avalanche, there's Astar, which he had mentioned, Polygon, et cetera, and obviously ETH, all of which will benefit from where this could go. Okay, so let's continue into this because this is where the activity continues to go on chain, and this gets into things like real world assets. And this is talking about Anthony Scaramucci's Skybridge Capital planning to tokenize 300 million into AVAX. Now, what would that do if that were to occur? Let's go over and take a look at the top list. There's Avalanche holding it around 193. If they start to pump that up, let's say that's 200, you're up around 500. It's very possible that they flip right underneath or maybe above Solana. So they could literally slide into the number 4 slot, holding somewhere in the range of 3 to 5% of the RWA holders out there. So that would be significant for Avalanche. Another good thing for the AVAX ecosystem, but it does start to accelerate because Scaramucci is going to create a domino effect, and you're going to see a lot of these funds start to do this. So watch out for that one. Now, listen, if you guys are not part of the Diamond Circle, make sure and get in right now. It's a great place to get additional content from us. We have some very special things getting ready to happen over on paulbaronnetwork.com. I'll tell you more about that next week, but all you have to do is click the link down below. It's absolutely free to join. Follow me on X, @PaulBaron. We'll catch you next time right here on The Paul Barron Show.